Hey everyone, I'm Danielle. I'm the owner and artist of Paintin' and Poppin' Traveling Paint Parties LLC. Remember, there's no G at the end of painting or poppin'. Contact me today to book your private, in-person, or virtual paint party. We are serving Chicago's south suburbs and northwest Indiana. Parties start at $35 per person, and they also start at $25 per child. Virtual parties start at $40 per person. You have to have a minimum of 8 people, and a deposit is required. You'll receive live instruction as well as all supplies needed for painting. Virtual parties are held via Zoom. Contact me today to get started. You can reach me at paintinandpoppin@gmail.com, or you can find me on Facebook at Paintin' and Poppin' or Instagram at Paintin' and Poppin' Parties. Remember, no G on painting or poppin'.
Wow, there's been a whole lot of interactivity since the last reading with Senyah Haynes, and we want to welcome you back to From a Black Perspective, the virtual reading for the people. This author is Texas-born and now resides in Kansas City, Missouri with her husband and 2 children. She's the creator of Kamina's Creations, an online handcrafted art store. She holds a bachelor's of liberal arts from the University of Missouri at Kansas City and is a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. She contributes to the people with Memoirs of a Hidden Pain, which is a compilation of life experiences and creative license, including traumatic abuse, she explains. Please welcome the author of Memoirs of a Hidden Pain, Monica Brown. How are you, Monica?
I'm great, thank you.
Good to see you, and thank you so much for sharing your piece. Are you ready to start reading?
Let's go.
All right, go ahead.
Earliest memories. My earliest childhood memories of a time gone by, flashes of images like an old movie reel. Some are bright and sunny, filled with childlike wonder and innocence. Others are dark and misty as though they're my own. I find these images playing faster and faster, and as the time I spend alone increases. I try to make sure that I take time to stop and admire the clouds whenever possible, as this was my favorite earliest memory. It keeps me grounded amidst the turmoil of my world. As a child, I was prone to horrific nightmares that still haunt me as an adult. Following up on the dreams, I realized that some of the nightmares weren't dreams. They resulted in experiences that were too painful or traumatic to vividly remember. They're still fuzzy in my brain, but I figured out underlying messages that my subconscious has been trying to tell me about for 3 decades. I often wonder how I make it through some of the more hellish episodes that I've experienced. This has to be God's way of telling me I'm stronger than I ever could have thought possible. When I was a child, I wanted to be a lawyer. At the age of 12, my world exploded into a million pieces. At that point, I decided I needed to understand why people say and do these things. I thought I wanted to be a lawyer for at least 6 years. Still, in college, I decided that I truly needed to understand human nature. I went into psychology, and more to the point, I wanted to work in the behavioral analysis unit with the FBI. I've always felt the pull to help others, and it seems that now this is my way to tell my story. I used to think that my childhood was fairly normal until I started talking about my experiences and realized most people can't even comprehend some of the things I've witnessed or lived through. There are not too many memories that I can call before the age of 12. This is when my world shattered and my family kind of helped me put pieces back together. The psychology in my background tells me that I've blocked out 2 painful memories. I managed to disassociate to protect my mind. Because the memories are a veiled mist, I will relay them as accurately and coherently as possible. Still, it isn't always easy to do. I don't often speak of my parents. Mostly I speak of my mother, and for good reason. My father's life ended when I was 12, and that's part of this book's purpose, to chronicle that particular journey and how it shaped me into who I am today. To explain, I'll need to back up a little bit and fill in some background. When I was little, my mother and I used to watch Designing Women religiously. I must have been around 6 or 7 at the time, and there was an episode I will never forget. After watching it, I wasn't sure how to feel or what to say, so I said nothing at all. I still wonder if I had spoken up back then, if our lives would have been changed. The episode was about a woman and her daughter that were fleeing an abusive husband. I remember relating to that little girl with all of her fear and her guilt, and I cried myself to sleep that night. There was a line where the little girl said something to the effect of, "We don't talk about what happens inside of our house, outside of our house." That was a signal that something was wrong in my household, as I'd had a version of this ingrained into me from an early age. I can recall multiple occasions of hearing my mother and father fighting when I'd gone to bed. It would get so loud that I'd wake up terrified and unable to get back to sleep until things had calmed down. I know the sound of guns being cocked, not because my parents took me hunting, but because when the fights would escalate, my father would point a gun at my mother and threaten to kill her. What I didn't realize at the time was the extent to which my father abused my mother. I still remember 2 times that my father punished me for something that I had done. The first time I can remember, I was around 7 or 8. I'd gone outside without permission after school, gotten my shoes muddy, and then I tried to hide them until I could clean them. My father saw them when he came home from work, and he spanked me. The spanking resulted in welts up and down my back and legs, and I had to sleep on my stomach for a few days due to pain. I can remember feeling the braided part of his leather belt burning every mistake into my skin. The agony of trying to bathe as the soap would pour over my fresh wounds, and I remember trying to cry silently so as not to re-invoke his rage. The feeling of my jeans rubbing up against the injuries was excruciating. Still, I went to school every day and pretended that it didn't hurt. I didn't even let my father see that he'd hurt me because it was the only act of defiance that I could show. The second incident happened maybe 4 months before my father's death, right after we moved to Phoenix. I'd gone into the front door of the house we were sharing with my aunt to check on my cat. As I walked into the living room, my father was roughhousing with a few of my male cousins, so I simply went out the side door while taking care of the cat. My father called me back inside, and without even giving me a chance to explain any of my actions, he backhanded me so hard that I flew across the living room. This was the first time that he'd ever struck me in front of anyone outside of my mother. It was also the last. At that moment, I made up in my mind that he would never lay his hands on me again. And he must have seen it in my face because he never even attempted after that incident. Now, I need to pause here and state something that my mother's told me repeatedly. No one that met my father wasn't afraid of him. There was, however, only one person who would stand up to him, and that was me. Based on the reasons I've mentioned earlier, this scared my mother more than anything else in her life. Imagine with me, if you will, a child standing up to this man by the age of 3. I was, after all, my father's daughter. This man who thrived on the fear that he instilled in others, and his own child had the nerve to stand up to him consistently. Until the night he died, I was still standing up to my father. I realized that he enjoyed inflicting pain and fear pretty early on, that he lived to torture others and would continue until he had someone cowering in fear. I flat out refused to give him that satisfaction. The last family gathering I attended was a birthday party for one of my baby cousins. All of our family was there with the children of one cousin, with the addition of a cousin that was married into the family. We'll call her Deandra. Her cousin's name is Ebony. As the sun set, the adults decided to move their party to a bar. The kids were left at home with the ones that were not quite 21. The older cousins and uncles in the group stepped into a room to get high and left the younger ones, maybe 15 and under, in the living room to watch TV. Everything was fine for an hour or so. Then my dad arrived and said he needed Ebony to come to the bar because her cousin was too drunk to drive. That was the last time I saw my father alive. He didn't even pause to look at me as he left. I still remember silently pleading with Ebony not to go with him, thinking, the drunken wife, Deandra, doesn't drink. Another hour or so passed when my mother arrived at the house that we were at the party. As soon as I saw her, I knew. I knew that this night would be different from the other nights that she'd been beaten while my father was in a rage. I quietly answered if she asked if my father had been. I wept inside as I watched the dawning horror on her face. She told me to get her things, and then Deandra was speeding back to our residence with us in tow. My mother kept repeating for the entire ride. He raped her. I know he did. That's what he does. There was some more back and forth dialogue, and my mother very clearly said, when he's done with her, he's going to come home and beat me because of what he did to her. He'll probably kill me. Promise that you won't let him get away with it and that he can't have my daughter. Deandra didn't say another word. She just sped up to get to our house. When we got home, I was immediately sent to my bedroom. I know I dozed off because I woke up to my mother answering the phone and Deandra screaming that Ebony was on the phone. From here, my aunt began to get hysterical and yelled, "What do you mean he raped you?" As they hung up, my mother spoke to my aunt and said, "He's coming here. He's going to kill me." There are more time lapses for me here. I have no clear indication of how much time passed, but it couldn't have been more than 2 hours. I know I fell asleep because I had the strangest dream when my father was coming to tell me that he loved me despite everything he'd done and he was sorry. He said goodbye. Suddenly, I was ripped from my dream by 3 gunshots and I knew it was my parents. By the time I could get out of my bedroom, my mother had come back in, dropped the rifle, and was calling the police. All she said was her name, our address, and I just shot my husband. Realizing that I was standing there, she pulled me into a tight hug and began to apologize. At 12 years old, my reply to her was so honest that it was scary. I whispered through my tears, "Mom, I know. I know what he's been doing to you. I would have ended up killing him to save you. I planned to kill him to save us. I don't blame you. I know what he was."
Thank you so much for that compelling reading, Monica. I have to tell you that the first time that I read this, I vowed that I wasn't going to read it again until I processed all of my feelings. I honestly think that this literary work needs to be produced into some sort of film because it reminded me of so many classic films, but specifically Mississippi Damned on Netflix. I don't know if anybody knows of that, but it takes so much courage for us to share the darkest areas and parts of ourselves in our lives. And it seems that we often are made to be silenced, not only by communication or our words, but the acts that create fear in our lives for years to come. We need to know in our community that speaking out is necessary to process our woes. Can you please share what regular practices you have to create a healthy dynamic in your core family today because of your traumatic experiences?
Absolutely. So there are some things that I do daily that weren't necessarily done for me in my childhood. I create a safe space for everybody in my home. So I talk to my children, to my husband, I talk to my mom. How's your day? Is everything okay? Anything going on? And I'll probe if they don't submit themselves to see what's going on.
Thank you for sharing that. It takes a mighty warrior and someone with purpose and intention every day to be able to create a healthy life for your children and for your family and to forge with having healthy relationships. It looks like rumor has it that you already have a book cover for your upcoming novel. Can you tell us about it?
I do. The artwork for the novel Memoirs of a Pain is about different kinds of masks, because that is the ongoing theme throughout the story is masks and how I've used them to just kind of mask everything I've lived through.
So now, how do you deal with masking in your environment, wherever you are?
I try to be a little bit more. I'm definitely a lot more vocal with my husband when things are bothering me. If I'm doing like some kind of triggering scenario, I do everything I can to let somebody know, hey, I need to back off from this, but I don't have to tell you why.
And do you think those relationships that are external to your core family or your nuclear family, you do more masking, or do you try your hardest to be as transparent as possible?
I still mask. I'm still learning. I'm still working in progress.
Yes, we all are still works in progress, and we just want to thank you for your time. And I can't wait to read the broader piece, Monica. I hope you have a great day, and thank you.
Check out Comina's Creations for all your usable and wearable art needs. Customized tumblers, personalized pens and stylists. Personalized clear handbags. Designer glow-in-the-dark domino sets. And other products personally designed by Comina's Creations. Visit Comina, COMINA_S Creations on the web and all your social media outlets. Back to the show.